Okay. So perfect. So hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on Catch Up. Today we have our LoveBiz training and development workshop for our LoveBiz members. And our speaker today is Sorrel Pinder, and the topic is to speak, listen, ask. And it's all about empowered communication for women in life and business. And I think that was just a great topic for us all to cover. So what I want to do is, Sorrel, I want you to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then it's over to you to actually have our presentation. So ladies, anybody has any questions, please pop them in the chat box and we will address those and pop those over to Sorrel at the end of the recording. So Sorrel, please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and I know you are going to be sharing screen, so enjoy, and yeah, over to you, Sorrel.
Thank you, Jackie. It's great to be here. And I know at least some of the ladies in this room, but for anyone who doesn't know me, I'm a relationship coach. And actually, when I've got some slides for this workshop, and when I put them together, I made a little slide about who I am, and therefore why I'm kind of qualified to talk about this. And the first thing on my slide is that I went to boarding school, which seems a bit weird. Well, how's that got to do anything to do with anything? But all the things, all the bad habits or bad communication habits that I learned at boarding school. And it's a kind of a demonstration of where I'm coming from with this, which is that a lot of the strategies that we use in communication that let us down originated in childhood. So if it's okay with you, ladies, I'm going to start sharing my slides. I'm going to try not to make this death by PowerPoint. So I apologize if that's how it comes across. Um, so just a moment while I wait for this irritating thing there we go. Right. So I called this um, empowered communication, partly because I wanted to talk about a different type of power.
Sorrel, we can't quite hear
Um,
you.
and this is not just, I'm
Sorrel, we can't.
mostly referring to husbands and partners because that's what I mostly work with.
Sorrel,
Oh, is that any better?
you're still cutting in and out.
Can you hear me now?
I can. Is everybody? You continue
I
talking.
can't. It looks like I have frozen because I cannot see any movement from anybody.
Yeah,
I'm
you're
going to stop.
right. We've lost Sorrel. Okay. Sorry, ladies, we've just lost Sorrel. Um, Let me just message her.
She's coming back, Jackie.
Yeah, perfect.
Hi, sorry about that.
It's
Zoom just
okay.
booted me right out.
That's okay. Okay. Do you want to try share screen again now?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, and hopefully it'll work.
Oh, here we go. So
Okay.
here we are.
Okay.
Can you all see that?
Yeah, we can see that. Just you're
And you can
sounding a lot
hear.
better now, Sorrel. That's perfect.
Okay. So what I wanted just to start with today is to talk about why this is important, and then talk a little bit about me, and then I'm going to move on to something called the five losing strategies, which are communication strategies which let us down, not just in personal relationships, but across the board. And then to talk about trying something different, because if what you're doing now isn't working, then try something different. And I will talk about speaking, listening, and asking, because those are quite specific subjects. And then when I'm going to talk at the end of that, I'm going to talk to you about my offer, which is for you today, and then move on to the Q&A. So hopefully I'll be talking about 25, 30 minutes. Um, so why is it important? Well, actually, the divorce rate hovers around 50%, which is pretty staggering. It dropped, I think, in the last couple of years because people can no longer afford to get divorced, which is probably worse. And patterns of dysfunctional communication, they don't just repeat across relationships, like between, say, from your partner to your children, to your parents, to your friends, but they pass down through generations. I mean, decades of a life and then through the generations. And if you want to make a change, as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. So if you want better communication with other people, it starts with you. And this is about not just about changing the way we communicate, but also about the way we think about power. Because I know from my own personal experience, it was my attitude towards power, which was getting in the way of good communication with my ex, who is my ex, as I would point out. And the other thing is that relational communication, so communication which builds a relationship, is relevant at work just as much as it is at home. So why me? Well, like I said at the beginning, before Zoom kicked me out, I'm a boarding school survivor, and most of my bad habits I learned at boarding school, and they kept me safe, but they didn't help me in my relationships. And I'm on my fourth big relationship now. And the first three they weren't all disasters, but they were none of them very successful. And the man I'm with now, we both went to boarding school actually, and we've done everything differently, and we've been very conscious about how we relate to each other. And that kind of as a result of Mark and me really being very conscious about our relationship, I ended up working as a relationship coach. I started out doing mental health coaching, and started working with couples last year. And my first couple was started in January last year. But I've also done some specialist training in coaching women with an organization called One of Many. And I'm now training to work with couples with the Relational Life Institute, which is set up by a man called Terry Real, who is a really experienced couples therapist and family therapist. I think he's about 73 years old. And his focus is on those patterns of communication which let us down, and also on their origins, so that you kind of get to the root of the problem in order to heal it and to change it. So what you're going to learn today, you're going to learn about the 5 losing strategies. You're going to learn about relational mindfulness, soft power, and something I call common cause, and then the speaking, listening, and asking piece. And there's a couple of extras at the end, which I didn't get onto this page. So 5 losing strategies. So this is a big piece, and I mean, I could probably talk about it for an entire hour, but I don't want to be doing that. So I'm going to run through them relatively fast. But Terry Real and all his years, this comes from Terry Real and all of his years of experience, he's not found a 6th losing strategy, which I guess is good news. So the first one, which is the one that I am most guilty of, is needing to be right. And sometimes it might be that you are right, but proving that isn't going to help anything. So trying to convince your partner that they're wrong and you're right, and they should just jolly well listen to you and understand your point of view, isn't actually very relational. And Terry Real has a lot of quotes, and one of the ones I really like is, in a relationship, the answer to the question of who's right and who's wrong is who cares. So there are things with my partner where I think, I don't think I really believe that. I'm not sure I don't think that's true. But me banging on about it isn't going to help. If it's important to him to believe something that I don't agree with, I can let him do it. I can let him believe it. So the second one is trying to control your partner. And that could be things like whether or not they are not offload, empty the dishwasher on time, or take the bins out on time. Or it could be like trying to get them to drink less coffee or drink less alcohol. And it may be that actually it's a good idea for them to stop drinking that much alcohol, but trying to control them isn't going to help. And because people don't like being controlled, very often we do that too much, they end up retaliating. The third losing strategy is unbridled self-expression, which I also have been guilty of in the past. And it's based on a tired old idea that we should all engage in authentic expression and get it all out there and don't hold anything back. But it's just not very relational. Nobody wants to be on the receiving end of all that bile or all that grief or all that anger. So, the answer to this one is to actually do a little bit of emotional regulation so that you can talk about things without it being kind of like a vomit fest. The fourth losing strategy is retaliation. And that could be either very direct retaliation, like, I don't know, smashing your partner's favorite mug because of something they did or said that you weren't happy about. Or it could be more indirect, like passive aggressive behavior, which is probably what we're more of us are inclined to do, is make those passive aggressive comments, snidey comments. And the final thing is withdrawal. And this is where people often end up. So I've gone through all of the other losing strategies, or some of them at any rate, and at the end, they just can't be in the same room together. And either one of them will storm out of the house or go to bed, or they'll both just kind of avoid each other and try not to get into that conflict. And the withdrawal can be done in a way which is relational. We call it timeout, and it's something that you agree on in advance. And the idea is that you say, I know that if I stay here, I'm going to say something that we will both regret, so I'm going out now. So, why do we do this? Well, the losing strategies, they're all behavior patterns we developed as children to keep us safe. Like I said, I learned most of mine in boarding school. I'm sure I learned some before I went to boarding school as well. And we call them adaptive child patterns. Your adaptive child is the part of you that is trying to keep you safe when life was really bloody difficult when you were little. So you have another part called your wounded child, which is the part that hurts. And then you have your adaptive child, which is the part that's trying to keep you safe. And unfortunately, we carry on using those behaviors into adulthood. So they may have been very effective when we were little, but they don't work in adult relationships. And it looks more like a knee-jerk reaction, which we kind of drop into when we get triggered. And I'm not saying we do this every day. These are the things that we do on a bad day. So again, I'm coming back to Terry because he's such an amazing fount of really good quotes. So he says, what is your enemy? More of the same. What is your friend? Something different. So this is all about doing things differently. So one of the first things I teach my clients, usually in the first or second session, if I'm working on a relationship issue, is what we call relational mindfulness. And it helps you to move from first to second consciousness. And so first consciousness is your adaptive child response. And second consciousness is your adult response. Part of you that's thinking, oh, actually, I don't want to create a fracas here. I actually want us to solve this problem and get closer together. And you need relational mindfulness when you feel triggered. And what I recommend, and this comes up in all sorts of contexts, the ABC method. I didn't make it up, and I know it gets used by other practitioners in other areas, but it's a really useful method. You start by acknowledging what you're about to do. So it's your awareness that you're about to do it. And actually, at the same time, you can be acknowledging your adaptive child part and saying, thank you, you've been keeping me safe, but I don't need to do this now. You're taking a breath to create a pause. So really that thing about acknowledging your adaptive child is happening during that pause. And then you choose to do something different. So you're choosing second consciousness, you're choosing adult behavior. You're choosing to be relational rather than going to conflict. And it does take a bit of practice. The first few times you may not hit A until you're kind of halfway through the thing you decided you didn't want to say. But with more practice, we get better at things. And in the end, it becomes almost like second nature. So I want to talk about power. And some of this is probably old hat to some of the ladies in this room. But the old model of power, which we were probably all of us grew up with, was power over. So what you might think was the old patriarchal model. It's basically one person getting someone to do something that they don't really want to do. So this chap here, I looked at that photograph and I thought, I'm so glad that's not my dad. My dad was nothing like that. He was never that man. But I could imagine, if you grew up with a father like that, the impact it would have on you. And if you were married to a man like that, the impact it would have on you. So what we're talking about here is soft power. And actually, I put power with on the slide, but I can also talk about power to. So power to is basically that you have the power to do things. And sometimes we relinquish that power and we become a bit of a doormat. But what I want to talk about here is power with, which is the things that you can do with your other half, or say with your child or whatever. And that power with thing assumes common cause. And that was the thing I wanted to come on to next. Except that there's another slide in the way. I'll come on to common cause in a minute. So there are kind of peppered through this talk, there are some winning strategies. something to oppose the losing strategies with. And the first winning strategy, and you could say cherish your partner, or you could say cherish your child, or you could say cherish your relationship. And it's about moving out of me and you, where we're in opposition to each other, into us, where we're working together. And that's the common cause thing, really. So if you want to be in a relationship, be relational. I mean, it sounds a bit obvious, but somehow I mean, I know with my ex that I was rarely relational. We were in conflict most of the time. Well, not at the very beginning, but probably the final last 10 years. And so what that means is cherishing your partner and putting the relationship center stage. So you're always keeping relationship in the front of your mind. And that's where the relational mindfulness is so helpful. It's a common cause. And this is what makes it a lot easier. So you're looking for common cause. And in a marriage, it might be the welfare of your children. It might be the state of your roof that, the house isn't about to start leaking. It could be the marriage itself. And in a business, we can also find a common cause with a customer, with an associate, or with a business partner, or a JV partner, or something. So you'll go, and it's probably easier in a business relationship than it is in a marriage, actually, if I'm going to be honest. So the common cause is the purpose that gives us the leverage to say, let's work on this together, rather than being at odds with each other all the time. So I'm moving on to speaking, listening, and asking now. So when we're speaking to men, and I'm specifically talking about men here because our minds work a little bit differently. Men tend to sort for solutions, whereas quite often we might just want to offload. And I've seen this in other relationships or friends where the one's a man and the other's a woman, and she just wants to offload and he wants to give a solution. So if you just want to offload, you've got to let him know. You've got to tell him up front, I've got something to talk to you about, and I don't want you to give me any solutions. I don't want any advice. I just want you to listen. And again, remember to avoid losing strategy number 3, which is unbridled self-expression. Because if you go in there and you've got a problem you want to talk about, but then you give him the full works, as it were, it's not going to be well received. You want to make it possible for him to listen to you in a way that it's not so hard for him. So that's speaking. Listening is possibly the more complicated thing. Most of us, when we listen, we don't really listen. We think we're listening, but actually our minds are drifting off in other directions. And when you give the gift of really listening to somebody, they really appreciate it because they feel heard. So the first thing I would say is it starts with what we call turning towards bids. So that's a bid for attention. So, somebody comes into say the kitchen or your office or something and asks for your attention. And you can either say, oh, hang on a second, of course. Yeah, I've got you. Tell me. Or you can say, oh, just a minute, I'm busy. If you can actually say, yeah, of course, I'm here. You've got me. You've got my attention. That's really helpful. And it's actually a good predictor of a marriage lasting, interestingly. So then when you've given them your attention, you listen with nothing else on your mind. So you're not thinking about your rebuttal. You're not thinking about what's wrong with the argument. You're not thinking about what your advice you might give them. You're not thinking about what question you might ask them. You are not thinking about anything at all. And you're definitely not thinking about what you're going to do about whether you, never mind the PE kit or something. So, and if it's a situation where you really don't have time to give me your full attention, you might have to ask them to give you a rain check to say, can we talk about this later on? But don't do that too often. Because if you start to do that on a regular basis, it starts to look like you don't care. And I think I was guilty of that with my ex. So I was always too busy with the cooking and the cleaning and the children and everything else. And then I had work as well. And I probably didn't give him the attention he needed. And in the end, it got so bad, I couldn't bear to be in the same room with him. And that is not a good place to end up. So this really is, and again, it takes practice because you will find that your mind has drifted off to other things. And you will be thinking, oh no, I missed that last bit because I was thinking about the solution I might offer him, or I was thinking about some question I want to ask him. That's fine. Then you just feel like meditation, you come back, bring your attention back. And I say him, but I could also say her because it could be a female partner, it could be a child. So the final thing is asking, and this again is about men really, asking men for stuff. So I'm going to tell you a little story about me and my partner because it's quite a funny story really. And it's about my fence. We don't live together. He comes and stays the weekend up here and he goes back to his own place on a Monday morning. But he used to be a landscape gardener. And a couple of winters ago, one of my fences just fell to pieces. It's a very old fence. It's probably circa 1962 or something. And all the wood had rotted and it had all kind of collapsed into the neighbour's garden in pieces. So we noticed that the fence needed some work doing to. And I said to him, "Oh, do you think you could fix it? I mean, can you put a new fence panel in?" And he said, "No, I won't get a fence panel in there because there's a tree in the way." Um, so I didn't need to get his attention. The fence got his attention, actually, to be honest. And I didn't really need to ask him, is this a good time to talk? But I think I have said that to him once or twice, something that's come up and I'm thinking, I don't know if this is a good time to talk, so I ask him. And it usually is fine to talk then. But the next thing was, okay, what are we going to do about this fence? And he said, well, I don't want to buy anything. I want to upcycle as much as possible. I'm going to go skip surfing for a couple of weeks and see if I can find all the bits that we need for this fence. So I thought, fine, that means I'd have to pay for it. That's great. And I can remember my impatience as I waited for the day when he was going to repair the fence. And he said, no, can't do it yet. It's too wet. I've got to wait till the weather's just right. And he finally got all the bits he needed for it, and he bought a hammer. And I was thinking, when is this fence going to get repaired? But no, don't say anything, don't nag. Um, and I didn't even try to tell him how to do it because I had no idea. That was definitely his thing. But it's really important to you tell them what you need and you let him come up with his own solution. Because if you've got the perfect solution, you can do it yourself. Or you can tell him, I'd like to do this and this and this. Can you help me with it? It's not quite the same thing. Anyway, I did say to him, number 5, ask what you can do to help him give you what you want. What can I do to help you, Mark? He said, oh, well, you can pass me bits of wood when I'm nailing them into place. And you can give me some nails. Where are the nails in your house? And of course I said, thank you. But the really critical thing was I didn't nag. I could have nagged him every weekend for about 2 months. But I didn't because I knew that wasn't going to help. And the fence got fixed and it's still standing. It's a very unusual fence. I'm happy with that because nobody much looks at it. It's the back of the garden. And if I wanted a perfect fence, I'd have hired a professional fencer to do it. And I'd have probably waited 6 months instead of 2. So asking men for stuff, and this is really about allowing them, they're giving you a solution, allow them the power to do that solution without you interfering. So I wanted to talk very briefly about talking about feelings. And again, this is kind of in the culture, it's the water that we swim in. That most of us believe that our feelings come directly from things that happen to us outside of us. But that's never true. And even if somebody set out to hurt you deliberately, it only works because you're allowing yourself to think things that lead to that pain. This is actually quite hard to explain. I don't have enough time. But it's all about the meaning that we give their behavior, and how we've interpreted their actions. But nonetheless, if somebody routinely hurts you by doing something, you might want to try and make it possible for them to stop doing that, particularly if they're not really intending to hurt you. So I want to talk about 2 winning strategies now. Number 2 is owning your shit. So first of all, recognize that you were triggered. And generally speaking, if we're triggered, it's because of something from further back in our life that's been kind of in there for a long time. But most important of all, instead of saying, you make me angry when you do that, you can say, I feel angry when you do that. That way you are actually owning it yourself rather than externalizing onto them. And to be honest, we have more power when we take responsibility for our feelings than when we do when we give that responsibility to somebody else. And you're not returning anger with anger, which is really important. You do not want to be offending from the position of victim. And always remember that you are the creator of your own feelings. But the third winning strategy is something called the feedback wheel. And this is how we actually talk about how that person can change their behavior so that we won't hurt so much. Introduce that when people have kind of got into the stage where they can get into the second consciousness relatively easily, when they've got their triggers slightly under control. But I'm assuming all you ladies are able to do that straight away. So I'll explain it to you. So the first thing you say is, this is what I recall happening. So this is what happened out there. So a good classic example, yet again, you did not empty the dishwasher in the evening before you went to bed. And when I got up in the morning, it was full of dishes and I couldn't load it I had to empty it first in order to load it, and then I was late for work. And this happened, this was a client. And this is what I made up about it. What I made up about it was that you don't care about me, because if you did, you would remember to empty the dishwasher when you came in from you were doing your music thing in the garage before bed. And this is how I felt. I felt really angry, and I felt really hurt, and I felt really uncared for. And this is what would help me feel better. This is what you could do that would help me feel better. You could maybe put an alarm on your phone to remind you to empty the dishwasher, or something so that you don't come in straight in from the garage and go straight to bed. Something to make sure that you empty it, because I know you want to do it, because you told me you didn't mean to forget it, you just did forget it. So it's a different way of asking for what you want, where you keep possession of your own feelings and your own thinking about what's happening, rather than project it all out into your partner. So to sum up, when we're having a bad day, we tend to resort to using those 5 losing strategies. And, we don't necessarily do that all the time. Hopefully it only happens now and again. And those losing strategies are behavior patterns that we developed as children to keep us safe. So that's our adaptive child. But we can switch them out for more relational styles of communication, particularly using that relational mindfulness thing, the ABC method. And there is an art to speaking, listening, and asking. And what I just talked about was those winning strategies. So taking ownership of your feelings. So here again, the 3 winning strategies. When you get triggered, use the ABC method to move into second consciousness. Listen deeply so your partner feels heard and cherished. And instead of saying, you make me angry when you do that, use the feedback wheel so you can say, I feel angry. I feel angry when you do that, which is slightly different. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the offer I have for you today. I have this available until Easter, which is actually quite a long time, but I only have 5 slots because it's so insanely inexpensive. It's 3 one-hour sessions with me, and you can do them one-to-one with me, or you can do it as a couple. And actually, if you wanted to use it for something that didn't have to do with a relationship, I'd be happy with that too. So in the first beginning, we'll find out what is causing the problems between you, and then we'll map a way forward. And though that 3-hour package, 3-session package, is only £495, and it's at £95 until Easter, and I've got 4 slots left. And it's suitable for you if you're a woman and your relationship is still reasonably positive, like you still love each other and you want to reconnect on a deeper level. It is not suitable if there's any violence or abuse or gaslighting, or if anyone has been having affairs over a period of time. I would start with 3 sessions for that kind of thing. And then the benefits of this particular package is that you'll definitely find out which of the losing strategies you've been using. I have a quiz for that actually, which helps you get to actually find out which ones you tend to use more. You'll learn about relational mindfulness so that you start to communicate better with your partner, and you'll start to reduce conflict and move into more intimacy and connection. And again, if you wanted to, this could be done in relation to relationship with a child, say a teenage child. It doesn't have to be a partner. So the first stage is really about the losing strategies, which ones you use. You do the quiz to find out, and you start to understand why. So you're looking back into your childhood to where they originated. And the second session is about the dance that you and your partner engage in. So you'll be forming a dance with the way you interact. And if you change your side of the dance, they can't help but change their side because you can't carry on doing a tango if your partner's just moved into a waltz. Um, so you'll be observing yourself in interactions with your partner to see what that dance looks like. And the third stage is actually this starts more at the beginning, to be honest, but we'll be doing the relational mindfulness thing so that you get good at the ABC thing of being aware of how what you're doing is affecting your relationship, and you'll start to put us ahead of you and me. Um, so I've got some links here. I will pop them all in the chat afterwards, and it's time for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah. I
Hmm.
love that quote that you just said, change your dance.
Oh yes,
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Because obviously you can't do a tango if someone's doing a foxtrot. You've got to actually change. And yeah,
yes,
I really do love that. Um, so what I'm actually going to say now is obviously we'll come to some questions after we've actually stopped the recording. So I just want to say thank you so much, Sorrel. That was amazing.
thank
It
you.
will be again the one actually just I'm just going to quickly ask a question.
Yeah,
With regards to what you've just actually said, a lot of that you can actually turn that into your business um, setting, can't you, as well?
you can.
It,
Yeah.
yeah, and again, what's the best bit of advice that you would give with regards to, from a business point of view, when you've got relationships at work that are really struggling?
I would start with listening. You know what? When you listen to somebody, and unless you are managing to really wrong foot them, you're giving them something that they cannot help but appreciate.
Yeah,
Yeah. And also then you start to get better information because if you're really listening properly and you're not thinking about other things, you're going to hear things from them. It's not just what they say, it's their tone of voice and their
yeah,
body language. Yeah, all of
perfect.
those things.
Perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to say again, thank you. Thank you so much for being on here
Pleasure.
in our training and development workshop. So what I'm going to do now is I will stop the recording and then we will have some questions for Sorrel. So thank you everybody for joining and yes, take care.